How much technology do you use in your courses?
Yeah, I use, it's certainly nothing like a hybrid course or online course, and I've thought about those, trying to do those a little bit, but we don't have anything like that. The chemistry department's pretty resistant to trying to do that. I think they see it as a slippery slope. But given the courses that I do teach, we use, I think, a fair bit of technology in them. All the courses, yeah, pretty much all the courses except for the graduate seminars that I teach would be very large lecture format, so I'd have upwards of 140 students in most of them, and so I find that when technology either helps me connect to the students or facilitates some content that I want to try to present to them, I'm happy to try to embrace it. So those are really two very different areas. One is like, students are very comfortable with technology. They want to check their cell phone or their smartphone for information. They want to use the things that they're comfortable with in their everyday life. So I see it as a way of bridging that gap between me and what would be a very anonymous lecture, typically. And then the other areas, there's concepts that are very abstract in chemistry, just like in physics. And so sometimes an animation or things like that, or some of the things that are available on the internet, simulations and stuff can help explain the content. So two very different areas, but I think if it helps me with my students and my teaching in any of those two areas, I'm willing to at least explore it. I'm actually not that tech savvy. I have a little bit of a learning curve, so I feel that if I can do it, pretty much anybody can do it. Yeah.
And what technology do you find to be the most useful in your teaching?
Mm-hmm. Definitely the internet. So I do my own, use Dreamweaver and do my own webpage, but that's really the focus point of my of where I want to bring the students to. So that's where we have all of our emailing through that, all of our calendaring through that. Any PDF files that they need to bring to class, so if they'll have notes or worksheets that they need to bring to class, their homework links are through there. So it's really that central portal where, as long as they've got that page bookmarked, everything's going to be there. Their practice exams are going to be there, and so it just gives them a nice one-stop shop kind of place to look for everything. Mm-hmm.
Have you assessed the effectiveness of this technology in student learning?
Yeah.
And if so, how?
Well, so with using it as a way to communicate with students, that's mostly attitudinal then, and I have looked at that students do really like that one-stop shopping. It's just very easy to know where everything's going to be. If I need this worksheet, I need this practice exam, I need that link that he showed in class, they know that they exactly where to go, and it'll all be linked there for them. So I think it makes it really easy. And so I did attitudinal surveys on that, and students appreciate that a lot. They recognize that it's it looks pretty nice. It's a nice web page, and so it shows a certain level of sophistication. I think students nowadays are savvy, and if they see something that looks really thrown together or not very user-friendly, or if you have to go to 30 link clicks to get to something that they want, they're gonna brush that off, especially if you're trying to do it on your phone. Right. So they want something that's going to be a little bit polished. So I try to make it look nice and be user-friendly, and their response has been that it does do that. We also use, I mentioned that's where they link to their online homework, so that's another use of technology, and that's really helped me a lot. I know that it's certainly possible to collect student homework assignments, but for me, having the online homework has been really great. It gives me a lot of data that I can use in my research and in my teaching. So when a student, we've talked before about just-in-time teaching, for instance, and so an hour or two before class, their homework is always due. They have homework every single day, between every lecture, and the hour before class is due, their homework is due. So that hour I can go on very quickly and see if there's 2 or 3 problems. I gave a particular problem to the class. And that's just not the kind of thing I would have been able to do without technology. So we use Master in Chemistry. I know there's a physics and biology versions of the same program. And that's really helped a lot too. Seeing that data, that formative assessment that I can use for, even when I used to do paper homework and I would try to, grade, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, I'd collect 100. I couldn't do it every day, certainly, but if I did it 4 or 5 times a semester, even then it was like, to actually see how many students actually got it wrong. It's different than, well, I think a lot of students seem to be, but it's just different to have the numbers now. And then I don't know if I should talk about clickers. That's one thing that I haven't talked about yet, and we do use clickers in our classroom. And again, that's facilitated for me what I know other people do in different mechanisms, so it's definitely not the only reason to do it or the only mechanism to get to engage students this way. But for me, it's really been it's really facilitated the process. There's nothing magical about clickers, but what it has allowed me to do is to help again stress with students the things I value, and I value them coming to class prepared, coming to class prepared, being actively engaged during the lecture process. And when I do have them in that environment for 50 minutes, that valuable 50 minutes, I want them to be awake and engaged and working with their neighbors and helping each other. It also allows me to model when they're working together on a clicker question. It allows me to model what I want them to take with them in their own study groups afterwards. So, Jamie's sitting all alone. Why don't you guys talk? Could you check with her? So it's just those kinds, just kind of breaking down some barriers, helping students be more comfortable talking to each other.
And what would you have liked to know when you started using some piece of technology?
What would I like to have known? Like I said, I'm not very tech savvy. My home computer is, I have to struggle with stuff, and so it would have been nice to have a little more formal training. And I know that it exists out there. I know the CTL does stuff. I know Tech Services does stuff, but I never feel like it's very connected to here. I feel like, maybe at the beginning of the semester I see the schedule, and maybe I'll check to see what workshops are that semester, and I'll have the best intentions, but I'm really busy, and I wish it wasn't just taken for granted that, you're just going to learn that stuff. Well, I have my other job. I have to do research. I have graduate students. I have to teach my classes. This should just be a tool that I can adopt. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if maybe at the college level, maybe decisions have to be made and training has to happen at the college level. Maybe that would help. So if somebody came here and said, there'll be a NSM-wide Blackboard workshop to help you guys, instead of us having to go to the library or wherever the training's going on during a busy schedule, can that be facilitated and really help us learn it instead of burdening us with one more thing to learn or to deal with.
Have you ever been excited about a piece of technology for teaching but found it not effective in practice?
I would verge on saying the clickers. I mean, there were some times when I've spent literally hours and hours on the phone with them. They flew down here to see what was up with my computer, and to take off operating systems and put on new ones because it only works with and it's just silly, And by that time, again, I had invested so much time developing the pedagogy that I just stuck with it. But it came very close to being, this is not worth it, actually.
What are you most proud of about your teaching?
Definitely the connection that I'm able to make with students, even though it's a really big environment. Through all the little changes, and some of them involve technology, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just identifying things like math prerequisites that students don't really know. So developing tools so that they can help them, if they can self-identify, or if I can give them some assessment and says, I don't know how to deal with this mathematics, and then we have resources that we've developed and my grad students have developed. Again, we distribute those through technology, so they might go to their master in chemistry homework and take a diagnostic math quiz, and that would identify which worksheets they need to go, and then those worksheets would be posted online. So the technology is allowing us to distribute all those tools, but largely it's just identifying. I guess a different way to look at it is, instead of thinking of it as a class of 140 students, I really try to think of it as 140 classes. And so I think about, how do I tailor such a really diverse environment? We've got students in there who really should be in general chemistry, to the other extreme of literally science majors who've never had a chemistry class before. So they're all in the same environment. And if I treat it as one class, I found that I lose 50% of the class. So the pass rate from many years was about 50% of the class when I started teaching it. And that's because you hit the middle. And surprisingly, not only were the lower end students failing because they weren't being addressed, but a lot of the higher, stronger students were failing because they just tune out. They're like, you're going over fractions. This is, what's going on here? And so both ends were kind of getting lost. So what technologies allowed me to do, what treating the class as 120 or 140 different classes has allowed me to do, is I move the bar a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. And then I just make sure that all those resources are available for students who are lower on. So I think the thing I'm proudest of is just realizing that trying to take a class of 100 where administratively and college-wide I'm just forced to jam 140 people in there, and to start to differentiate that learning and say, you know, you're not all the same. So how do I even begin to address such diverse range of students? I don't want to bore the strong students. I don't want to lose the weaker students. And I think I'm starting to get there. And then last semester our pass rate was almost 75%. So it's really, yeah, it's pretty amazing.